welcome to lucky number 13, and it is our lucky number because this is a very valuable lesson that I'm about to show you on how to figure out the slope and how to figure out the length of sides that are drawn on a coordinate axis. Now, I've already started by putting this to a sheet of graph paper, and if you've got the homework page that you're working with, you can use that, or just get out a sheet of graph paper, or try to graph it as neatly as you can without graph paper. But the graph paper is really very helpful, and you'll see that my technique of figuring out the slope and the length really makes it necessary that you're using a sheet of graph paper. On the exam, sometimes it says the use of the graph paper is optional. Now, I would say definitely scratch that out and say it's definitely necessary to get a really good picture drawn in the first place. Number two, you can do your calculations very easy if you have a nice and clearly marked picture drawn on the graph paper. Now, I've already gone ahead and graphed this, so do that yourself. It should look like mine. And that's one thing that's very important when you're doing these questions, is not to go too fast. Make sure that these answers are right before you begin, because one mistake, like if I graphed point N at 2, +1, if I graphed it up there where that finger point is, then nothing would work out. So make sure that it actually is graphed correctly before you actually put your foot down on the gas pedal. All right, the question's asking me to prove that triangle Gen is an isosceles right triangle. Well, what am I going to have to prove? I'm going to have to prove that there are two equal sides. And I'm also going to have to prove that there are slopes that are negative reciprocals to show that there's a right angle. It does look right. It does look like there's a right angle here. And it does look like these two sides are the same. One way to organize your thinking on a question like this is to make a little table up that will list all the slopes and all the lengths that are in the picture. We might not need all of the information, but it's a nice way to completely list what you're seeing in the picture and calculating what's there. So we've got three sides, JE, EN, and JN. And what it will do is visually get the slope and the length from the picture. So JE is going down from left to right. It's going down 4 spaces over 2. So the slope would be down 4 over 2. To figure out the length, all you have to do is remember the work we did in the last straight fire video, which was on the Pythagorean Theorem. This is a right triangle here. So we can use a squared plus b squared equals c squared to figure out the remaining side, c. We can do this all in one big step by square rooting a squared plus b squared to get our c squared. That would give us radical 20 as the answer. And if you wanted to use a graphing calculator or a calculator to actually get the approximate length of that, you could. If you type it into the calculator, it's about 4.5 spaces long. All right, now we just have to do it again 3 more times. So looking at side EN, that is going up from left to right. It's going up 2 over 4. So the slope would be +2 up 2 over 4. And then we can just simply take those same numbers, the 2 and the 4, and put them under the radical and square them. And that is the quickest way, I think, to get the missing length. And look, we already proved that two sides are the same length. We were asked to prove that the triangle is isosceles, so you can just point to it and say it's isosceles. It's got two sides that are the same length. To make this question complete, you really do need to put some English down on the paper or write in your own native language. a sentence or two describing what you're seeing in the calculations. As it turns out, we could actually stop it right here because we do have enough information to prove that it's a right triangle. To be a right triangle, it has to have slopes that are negative reciprocals. And that's what we're seeing right there. One slope is negative 4 over 2, and the other one is completely upside down with a different sign. It's positive 2 over 4. And that's a way to recognize negative reciprocals. And whenever you see negative reciprocal fractions for the slopes, you know that you're dealing with two segments that are perpendicular to each other. So you would point those out. You can say that there's negative reciprocal slopes. And then maybe state a conclusion about that. Therefore, JE is perpendicular to EN. And then if you want to go even farther than that, you could say, so triangle Gen is a right triangle. If you did find the missing side, JN, we might as well just do that too. We've got the time. It might be very good for you if you're new to this. Figuring out the slope of JN. Well, is it up or down? It's going down. Down how many spaces? Down 2. Over how many spaces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the slope is down 2 over 6. Notice that I forgot something. The negative sign. It's going down 2 over 6. We can turn those numbers into a distance. And if you noticed, when I do that, I ignore the negative. And I just take the positive numbers that I see to the left. So 2 squared plus 6 squared square rooted will be the fastest way to figure out the answer. It's a radical 40. And if you wanted to actually get the equivalent of it, it would be 6 point, well, something or other. That's what calculators are for. Square root of 40 is about 6.3 spaces long. All right, let's go on to the last question. Again, for this last question, you want to use a sheet of graph paper as well. All right, so if you've paused the video to read the question, that's a good place to begin. And you also want to make sure that you have the graph drawn. And then you can unpause the video. So looking at this question here, it does ask us to use the grid and it's optional to use the grid. Well, I think that's just bad advice. You definitely want to use the grid to actually see what's happening here. And very simply here, Jim thinks he has a rhombus. Does this look like a rhombus? Well, what does a rhombus have? A rhombus has 4 equal sides. So we can write that down ahead of time. A rhombus has 4 equal sides. Jim also wants to prove that he did not make a square. Well, what does a square have that just an ordinary rhombus does not have? A square has 4 right angles. Or just one right angle will make it a square if it's already a rhombus. And a square will also have 4 equal sides. So those are the thoughts we want to do. We want to be thinking about the lengths, and we also want to be thinking about the slopes. Finding that the lengths are all the same will prove that it's a rhombus. Proving that the slopes are not negative reciprocals will prove to us that it is not a square. So a nice organized chart of information on the side here will be a very good way to make sure that we're getting full credit on this question. So just as before, I'm going to list the slopes, and then I'm going to list the lengths next to them. And even though all these calculations aren't necessary, it's still very good practice to do so. So let's do the side ET, and we've got the side TM, we got the side MA, and we also have the side AE. So let's take it side by side. So ET is going up from left to right. By just counting, it's going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's going over 3. So watch how fast this can be. The slope is up 7 over 3. Well, I might as well just keep on going with right across the top row. So it would be 7 squared plus 3 squared, square rooted, just as I did on the last page to figure out the length. So we'll get 49 plus 9, 58. So radical 58 would be how long it is. And we could stop it right there. We don't have to find the rounded answer. All right, so let's go on to the next side, TM. So TM has a slope that is up 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is up 3 over 7, also a positive slope. And if I use those numbers under the radical, I get exactly the same answer as I did for the one above it, radical 58. So you can see we're on our way to proving it. We got two sides that are the same length. Well, we really should get all four sides to make it official. Now, if you think you're a hot shot, if you think it's going, or you just think it's going fine for yourself, this is where you might actually make a mistake. So the length the slope and length of MA. Some students think that MA is a negative slope because it's going down from M to A, and that's too bad because that's wrong. So to find the slope of MA, you have to go from left to right to read it correctly. If you're using a formula to figure out the slope, then you don't really need to know where it begins and where it ends. But if you're going to be counting the slope, like I'm instructing you to do that in that way, you always have to start with the point that's on the left and flow to the right. So that's actually going up. Even though I'm calling it MA, I'm going from A to M because A is on the left-hand side and M is on the right. That slope is going up 7 over 3. And once again, we're going to get radical 58 for the length. And let's see if I got you on AE. What is the slope of AE? Positive or negative? I'm calling it AE, so you might think that it's negative because it's going down, but not so fast. This is actually going upward. Even though I'm calling it AE, we always start with the left and then with the right. So it's going up. Up 3 over 7. So just as we did the other ones, we're getting matching slopes across from each other. All right, I'm back from my important phone message. Okay, the plumber is coming, as it turns out. All right, so good things. I'm just about done on this video. So so where were we? Oh yeah, I'll be taking those numbers and plugging them in again and getting radical 58. So all this work is very, very good. Notice I'm doing a proof, but I'm not doing statements and reasons. I mean, that's for a geometric proof. So if you started thinking that you need statements and reasons to figure this out, then that's too bad because it's not necessary for a question like this. What do we need is calculations. We need also a sentence at the end or two to summarize what's happening here. So the rhombus has 4 equal sides. You can actually just point to that work right there. And a square has 4 right angles. But here, none of the angles are right angles. And how do I know that? Or how do we know that? Because none of the slopes, or none of the slopes ended up being negative reciprocal slopes because there weren't any. Negative reciprocal slopes. And you could even point to the evidence right there. In fact, every single slope was positive. For there to be negative reciprocal slopes, one would have to be a positive and the other one would have to be the exact opposite. So let's go through that one more time. So if there were negative reciprocal slopes, if we saw 7 over 3, then there would have to be a negative 3 over 7 someplace to create a right angle, and we don't have those. And that is a wrap for Straight Fire Math number 13. Hopefully it was your lucky number. And again, keep on working very hard. All the work that you put in does matter. Every little minute of practice, every video you watch, every question you do does make the difference. So have a great day, and we'll see you back here on Straight Fire Math.